Okay, so now we're going to go into the second drawer of my smaller palettes in my collection, because obviously they didn't all fit in one drawer, and I have more eyeshadow palettes in my drawer that I keep smaller highlighting palettes, eyeliners, and mascaras in. So we're going to go into the eyeshadow palettes that are in this drawer. So we have quite a few eyeshadow palettes in here, so let's go through them. So I have a couple from TJ Maxx. I have this one that I got a little Burberry quad. This is the Burberry Gold Shimmer number 28 complete eye palette, and obviously I got this at Marshall's. I did not pay full price for this. I think it was like 20 bucks, which I still think is kind of pricey for 4 eyeshadows. So this is what the little quad looks like. It has a little overlay on it. These shades are actually really, really pretty, but I would never get these full price. I don't think it's worth it, but they do perform very nicely. I just don't really find myself ever really using this palette all that much. I did use it recently, like a week or two ago, and it was a beautiful look. So I do like pairing this with like ColourPop shadows when I want to use and utilize my single shadows more. These are really pretty shimmer shades. And then the other palette that I have from TJ Maxx or Marshall's is the Smashbox Full Exposure palette. This is my only Smashbox palette, and I wanted the mini version so I could try out Smashbox's eyeshadows because I've never actually tried them before. So I was really interested in trying out their eyeshadows, and I think originally I got this at Ulta, and then I saw it for $2 cheaper at Marshall's, and it's a good palette. It performs well, but it's nothing special. I don't really feel inspired when I use this palette, but I do try to use it when I can. I've only used it like once this year. The mattes are good. The shimmers are good. It's a good palette. So I would say this is a really good travel palette. It works, but it's not like, oh my god, best palette ever. It's not like one of my holy grails. It's a good palette though. And then I have my 2 mini Natasha Denona palettes. I have the Natasha Denona Mini Star palette. This palette I got from Chip, and I actually really do like how this palette performs. I think I like this one more than the Sunset palette. I'm not going to open it up. The lid shades are very pretty, but I just feel like these are always palettes that you have to pair with another palette. They're not really palettes that you can use on their own. But I do like that I get a taste of the Star palette full size with this. I think that's kind of cool when she does them, and they are a cheaper version of those palettes, definitely. These are only 25 bucks as opposed to like $129. When I got the first one, I think you guys saw in my haul video that I posted of me and Chip's collab, one of the eyeshadows did fall out of the pan completely, so I had to go exchange it at one of the Sephora's on the island, and they were like, yeah, no problem, of course you can exchange it. So she was like, I'll resend it to you, just give me the order number. I'm like, no, that's such a big hassle. I was like, I'm just gonna go exchange it. They'll definitely let me exchange it in store, so it was no problem. But yeah, it's a good palette. It's not like one of my favorites, but it's good. And then I have my other Natasha Denona palette that I got with my money. And this is the Natasha Denona Mini Sunset palette. This is the only Natasha Denona palette I've actually paid for. The Star palette was gifted to me, and the Gold palette I didn't really pay for. I paid like 30 bucks for it. So this is the Sunset palette. And I do find that this palette's the most difficult to blend with the 2 mattes. But the shimmer shades are the only ones out of Natasha Denona that don't transfer. They don't transfer to the crease. And that's why I thought that these were like some of my favorite, or would have potentially been some of my favorite eyeshadows formula wise, but the other 2, the Star palette and the Gold palette, don't perform like that as much as the shimmer shades don't transfer. For some reason these shades just don't transfer, and they're so beautiful. And I did find that when I tried it in a First Impressions Get Ready with me when I first got it. I never picked up the full size, and I will tell you guys why. I just didn't want to spend the money on it, but I am going to be posting an upcoming video of palettes that I almost bought but didn't buy. I thought that would be such a good video to do. Okay, so then the next palette in here is my one and only Buxom palette. I saw that so many people would rave about Buxom palettes that I finally wanted to just try them out for myself. So I did get one of the customizable palettes where you can choose 6 shades, and it's like $40. It's a pretty good deal for 6 eyeshadows. And I love these eyeshadows. I think they perform so beautifully, and every time I use them, they're beautiful mattes, and the shimmer shades are stunning. I love this gold shade and this pinky shade, but I picked out, you know, 6 shades that I thought I would really use cohesively together. I picked out a crease shade, an outer corner shade, a brow bone highlight, a really beautiful pink, and then an inner corner and a lid shade, or a inner corner and a lid shade, because they're both really stunning shades. I really like this palette a lot. It's a really good palette. I finally used it again recently, and I definitely was not disappointed with the look that I came out with. Okay. Then my one and only Dose of Colors palette is the Dose of Colors Baked Browns palette. You guys know I've raved about this palette constantly. Dose of Colors mattes are so amazing, and I love this palette. I purchased this off their website a little while ago. And again, this is one of the only eyeshadow palettes that I have pan in. I have pan on the middle shade there, as you guys can see. I'm going to try and pan this shade as well this year. I feel like that would be the easiest one to pan besides the 3rd shade, because those are the 2 I use the most. I love putting this one on my brow bone, obviously, and these 2 for the outer corners or the crease. And these 2 I use in my crease every time I use this palette. It's just a really solid palette. It's such a good on-the-go palette. And they blend out beautifully. So I love the Baked Browns palette from Dose of Colors. It's such a good palette. Then I have a drugstore palette in here. I have the e.l.f. Mad for Matte Volume 1. A lot of people would rave about the e.l.f. matte palettes, and honestly, I don't think this palette is really that good. I wish I would have waited to get the Mad for Matte 2 palette. I feel like I would have used that palette more than this one. I'm just not a huge cool-toned fan of cool-toned eyeshadows. I use warm-toned eyeshadows a hell of a lot more. And this palette's good, but it's not like, oh my god, amazing. I just found it really lackluster for me. I just don't love drugstore eyeshadow palettes all that much. And then I have the infamous Becca Jaclyn Hill Champagne Collection eye palette. I don't know about you guys, but I thought that my palette actually performed pretty well. I guess I got one of the good ones. I actually really liked this palette. And I thought it was good. I don't have any complaints about this palette. The mattes perform beautifully. The lid shades are stunning. This Champagne Toast shade is one of my favorites on the lid ever. It's just stunning. And Chardonnay is a beautiful shade. Is it Chardonnay? Yeah, beautiful shimmer shade. So I like this palette. This is my one and only Becca palette, and I wanted to try the formula for Becca, and I think it's a good formula, and I think it's a good palette. So I've never had any complaints about this palette. Okay, let's just put away these real quick. Okay, so now rounding out the last couple of palettes in here, I have another drugstore eyeshadow palette. This is the Wet n Wild Not a Basic Peach palette. I forgot the name of this palette. So I kind of ruined this palette the first time and I dropped it. So I actually went and repurchased it. I'm holding it upside down, sorry. And I felt what is so weird is that I liked the first palette a hell of a lot more than this one. I felt like the first palette performed a lot better. I don't know if there was just inconsistencies with the formula, because I know like some people don't like this palette and then some people do, and I feel like that's kind of an inconsistency problem. Because since I've tried out 2 of these, and I really wanted to get it again because I actually really liked it and I did use it a ton. And I had such a big dip in this shade when I first got it. I thought the mattes performed beautifully, but now I don't really reach for it that much. But it's a good palette. This is definitely my favorite drugstore palette, but it's not like anything mind-blowing. Okay, then I have the Stila Eyes Are the Window Soul palette. This is also a palette that I needed to replace, but I'm kind of happy because I did still use it quite a bit. And it is a really good palette. I actually really like this palette a lot. This is the Eyes Are the Window Soul palette, I believe. Eyes are the window to the soul, basically. So this is what the palette looks like. Sorry, I had to put my phone down. And I did hit pan on one of the shades in this palette. I hit pan on Individual. And it's crazy that I even panned a palette or even hit pan on a shade that I had to replace this palette, that I had to replace the palette, because that never happens for me. Like, I haven't even hit pan on other eyeshadows that I've had for years, but I panned an eyeshadow that I replaced. So that's kind of crazy to me, but this is a beautiful palette. I love the mattes in here. I love Kitten, of course, one of the best shades ever. I love the gold in here. But I really only stick with the same six shades in this palette when I use it, but it's a really good palette. I really like it. So that's my one and only Stila palette. And then we have two more Too Faced palettes in here. We have the Too Faced Peanut Butter and Jelly palette. This is a really good palette. I actually just whipped it out and used it again recently. I'm like, I gotta use this palette. Like, this used to be one of my most used eyeshadow palettes. And I have used every single shade in this palette. It's just such cute little packaging. I love the tin packaging from Too Faced. Too Faced? Too Faced. Like, can we speak anymore, Caitlin? So this is the, oh my god, the Too Faced Peanut Butter and Jelly palette. I'm trying to open up and talk about every single eyeshadow palette in here. And it's a really good quality palette. The mattes, of course, are beautiful. Bananas is my favorite shade, of course. I mean, it's a gold shade. Sorry about the ridiculous close-up. But you guys know how much I love gold shades, and that's just my favorite lid shade in the palette. Peanut Butter, of course, is from the Semi-Sweet, which is great. Nuts About You's a beautiful matte. Peanut Butter Cup is beautiful. Peanut Brittle, Jelly, Jammin', Extra Creamy, Spread the Love. They're all beautiful shades. And then, of course, we have my last Too Faced palette in this drawer, and one of the best eyeshadow palettes from Too Faced, and this is the Natural Eyes palette, of course. Look at this packaging. It's so freaking girly and beautiful and romantic. Let's just open this one as well. Oh my god. I opened it and then closed it. So this is the Natural Eyes palette. I've been trying to hit pan on Silk Teddy for like 10 million years. I still haven't been able to. I've used this palette so much more than the other palettes that I've hit pan on, and just Too Faced eyeshadows last forever and a day. But this is my favorite cool tone palette I own. They're just beautiful shades that work with any look, and the lid shades are beautiful in here as well. I pretty much use Silk Teddy every single time though, because I'm trying to hit pan on that shade, but yeah, I just don't use it half as much as I used to. So that is it for all the palettes in this drawer. Okay, so I forgot one more eyeshadow palette in here. Sorry. This is the Marc Jacobs, the Lovers palette, I believe it's called. Right? Yes. I don't really ever reach for this palette anymore, but when I do, it's actually really, really pretty. So I almost decluttered this or put this in my makeup graveyard, but I really do like this palette when I use it. So I have to make it my business to use this palette at some point again. I've used every single shade in the palette, and they are really pretty. This is my only Marc Jacobs palette I've ever owned. And I wish I would have waited until these came to TJ Maxx, because a lot of people found these at TJ Maxx. But yeah, that is my only Marc Jacobs palette. And then I have a couple of single shadows in here, but I'm not going to go in depth of my single eyeshadows. I might do that in another video. So that is it for this drawer. If I could put these or fit these in the drawer. Okay, so now we're going to get into this drawer, which is all of my Z palettes. So these are the last eyeshadows that I have in any of these drawers. So the first Z palette is my Sephora Z palette. And these are all of my ColourPop eyeshadows in the first 2 rows and ending at that middle shade in the 3rd row. That is the last ColourPop eyeshadow that I have. You guys know how much I love ColourPop eyeshadows. As you can see, I've hit pan on Wake Up Call and Note to Self. Wake Up Call I finally hit pan on earlier this year, so that is another spoiler alert. I did hit pan on that shade. So Firefly is my most used transition shade. I probably will use up that shadow very soon. Hear me out. I'm trying to work on hitting pan on as well. That is one of my favorite brow bone highlights. I have a huge dip in it, and then Cloud 9 I'm trying to work on. And Let Me Explain is my favorite inner corner shade. I love it. I love the shimmer shades from ColourPop. They're so beautiful. I just love ColourPop eyeshadows. You guys know how much I love them. And then these are all Makeup Geek on, starting with this pink shade here and Curtain Call, which is the red, and all of these on the bottom. I never touch these eyeshadows anymore. I just don't find they really perform as well. These are like my dud shades from ColourPop, so from Makeup Geek, so I kind of just keep them in here. The only one I reach for is Simply Marlena. That's a beautiful matte pink. And then the 3 foiled shadows I do use quite a bit. These are beautiful. I do think that these are better quality than the original ones. And speaking of the original ones, here are the rest of my foiled shadows in my collection. I have all of the original shades that she released the first time. So the first 2 rows and the 3rd row ending with that blue shade there are all the original formula for the foiled eyeshadows. And I still use these when I can on my inner corners a lot. I typically only use like these shades like Starry Eyed, Whimsical, Magic Act, and In the Spotlight are so stunning on the inner corners. And I use High Wire a lot and Daydream, but the other ones I really don't use all that much. Charmed and Fantasy I use a lot too. Charmed is probably the only one I really use on the lid. And then I have the duochrome eyeshadows, which are Rockstar, and then I have this whole row and then this last row as well. I probably could fit a couple more foiled shadows in here, but I just like how this palette is set up, that I have all the duochrome shades that she first released. I bought these all in a bundle, and I love using Black Light, and I use a lot of these on the inner corners. I love this one on the inner corners. I love Voltage and Karma and what's the other one? Mai Tai and I'm Peachless. I use those a lot on the inner corners. So yeah, I do love using these for an extra pop on the inner corners, because when I don't have a good inner corner highlight from a palette, these really add such a beautiful pop of shimmer to your inner corners. So I love using them for that still. Then I do have one more eyeshadow palette in here. This is the MAC Pan 15 Pan eyeshadow palette. I just used, this is the Warm Neutral palette. This is a palette that MAC sells. This is not just a palette that I custom made. This is a pre-made palette. These eyeshadows are so beautiful in here. It had some cult classic favorites like Amber Lights and Saddle, which I love. It also has, well, those are the only 2 that I really knew that were cult classics, but they're all beautiful shades in here. They all perform really well. I pretty much have used every single shade. I think the only one I haven't used is like this green in here. I don't know why some palettes just throw random pops of color in there. Like, I'm never going to use the random pops of color. I only use the neutrals if I buy a neutral palette. But I just use this in a Makeup and Chill Fridays, and it's also a first impressions. Get ready with me on the rest of the products I used on my face. So yeah, I love this palette. It's such good quality. That's my only MAC palette. Then I have this Z palette, and this is pretty much my everyday neutral palette. This is my most used palette. As you guys could tell, I have pan on 7 Makeup Geek shadows. So the first 3 rows up until this purpley shade here, which is Petal Pusher, are all Makeup Geek. So I have Vanilla Bean, which of course I love, Beaches and Cream, which I've went through 3 times and I've hit pan on again. Peach Smoothie, which is my most used transition shade besides Beaches and Cream, and Creme Brulee, which is one of my favorite crease shades ever. I still have a backup sitting in my drawer that I still haven't used up the eyeshadow yet. And I also love all of these like Frappe and Latte. Then I have Shimma Shimma and Rapunzel, which are my favorite shimmer shades from Makeup Geek. They're amazing. And then Cupcake, of course, is like one of my favorite pinks. So that is all my Makeup Geek ones. Cocoa Bear I love, and Bitten. And then starting with Blanc Type here, which is the first white matte shade, to this whole row here, to this brown shade called Brown Down, are all my single MAC eyeshadows. So I have Nylon, All That Glitters, Soft Brown, what's this one called? I don't remember, but they're all really good. Copper Ring, I don't remember what that one's called either. What are these called? I'm like really curious now. Oh, right. They don't have a name because they're all like put in there by magnets. So yeah, those are all MAC. And then the last row, the whole row, are all my Anastasia single eyeshadows. So I have like Birkin, I have Sienna, which I love. I have Glitz, which is beautiful. I think that's called Glitz. And this one's beautiful. I think that's called Amber Rush. This is called Amber, and they're all stunning. I love Anastasia single shadows. They're beautiful. So those are all my Anastasia shadows. I did purchase all of those full price, though. I kind of wish I would have waited to get those. And then I have one more palette in all of these drawers, and this is my Tarte palette full of my Sugar Pill eyeshadows. So these are all Sugar Pill mattes. And then I have a couple of Luxie Beauty highlights and a couple of Luxie Beauty eyeshadows is what I would call them. And they're all beautiful. I was definitely more impressed with the Luxie Beauty eyeshadows than the Sugar Pill ones. A lot of people rave about Sugar Pill, and I just think Lime Crime shadows are better. I just found that they don't really translate to the eyes very well. I love the yellow, the orange, and the red. The orange and the red are beautiful. This is one of the best red eyeshadow I've ever used. It's amazing. It's called Love Plus. It's so good. But this one, Heart-Shaped Cookie, I got this because of the Fancy Face, and she would use it all the time as like one of her transitions. And honestly, I don't even know how it shows up on her because she has a lot darker skin tone than I do. And I just feel like it doesn't do anything for me when I use it. But the Luxie Beauty ones are gorgeous. I love these. That's what mermaids are made of. This one right here, and that's what but those are highlights. Why am I talking about those? But I love these two eyeshadows here. They're amazing. I forgot the names of them, but so that is it for all of these eyeshadows that I have in Z palettes. So now let's go to the palettes that I have up here on my display of like my favorite palettes or like just collector's items. Oh God, I'm tired. So I have the Too Faced Le Grand Palette Christmas palette. And this was the Christmas palette. Oh my God, what am I doing? This is the Too Faced Le Grand palette, and I only really whip out this palette when I do Christmas looks, so I do use this around Christmas time, and that's about it. This was basically my only collector's palette that I got from Too Faced, and I really, really like it, so I think it's a good palette, and I think it has everything you need. It's kind of like a one-stop palette. It has a brow bone highlight, it has beautiful inner corner highlights, it has beautiful lid shades. These blushes are stunning. I've used both of them and I love them. It has a beautiful highlight. It has a bronzer, which I love. So it has Sun Bunny. So I think this is like a beautiful, well thought out palette. It's one of my favorites. I have the ColourPop Where the Night Is quad, which I have all the single shades from there in my collection. And I have Where the Light Is, which I love as well. Those are all both beautiful. I love Caffeine Lights. Then, of course, I have my OG. Oh my God, why is everything falling? This is the Urban Decay Electric palette, of course. One of the classic colorful palettes. This was the best colorful palette, or one of the best pressed pigment palettes, in my opinion. It's so good, you guys. This is such a good palette. But I don't use it anymore. This was my first colorful high-end palette. And, again, my boyfriend did get this for me for Christmas. Like 4 years ago, but I don't typically use it anymore because I have so many shades in my collection that are like this, but they're so good. Such a good palette, you guys. They did discontinue this palette. I don't know why. It's such an amazing palette. I feel like the After Dark palette was trying to replace it, but nothing even comes close to how good this palette is. They really should do like an Electric Part 2. I don't know why they don't. I don't know why they haven't done that yet. Like Urban Decay, like, can you do that, please? Okay, so my most used eyeshadow palette on this shelf is the Kat Von D Metal Matte palette. So I got this palette in holiday 2017 because I knew that this was the palette that I wanted. And at first it was very overwhelming when I first got it. That almost fell on the floor too. But this is one of my most used palettes in my collection, because it has such a good variety of mattes in here that I use all the time when I do colorful looks. Like I love using Velour for blue looks. I love using Moss for green looks. I love these lid shades. They're all beautiful. I did use this palette in a collab video with me and Chip. For like a holiday look, we both used this palette together. And I loved the look that it came out. They're just beautiful shades. I'm probably going to use this palette today as well because I'm planning to wear my Little Mermaid shirt. And I'm probably going to use Moss and Velvet and Suede. Oh my God, I've been talking for so long, but this palette is bomb. I love it. Then we have the Urban Decay Alice Through the Looking Glass palette. And honestly, again, I got this palette for collector's purposes. I don't really do that much with eyeshadow palettes, and I don't really do that in general with makeup, but this palette was just so beautifully packaged, and I have used a ton of these shades in this palette, and I think that this is actually a really good palette. I think this is one of the best collector's palettes from Urban Decay. I think the shades are really beautiful. Sorry, my throat's getting really dry. I feel like because there's a lot of dust over here, my throat gets kind of like dry. But these are really pretty. I love using Hatter on the lower lash line. They're all really good. They have some really beautiful neutrals in here and some really beautiful matte colorful shades. Heads Roll Roll is beautiful, and Bandersnatch. And I love these shades on the lid. I've mostly used all of them, and it's not like I haven't used these eyeshadows. And then the last one on this shelf is the Too Faced Sugar Pop palette. I probably could just put this in my collection now because I usually use this typically during the summertime. So I do like using this a lot during the summer. So this is the Sugar Pop palette. It's so cute with the little macaroons. So this is my other tin palette from Too Faced, and I do have one more that I will show you guys. So it has like macaron, malted milk ball. I love these shades. I love Blue Raspberry, and I love Bubblegum. Those are like my two favorites, and these are beautiful shades for the brow bone and stuff. Really good palette. Rounding out the rest of the palettes that I put in my makeup graveyard, this is when I fell for the Morphe craze and bought a Morphe eyeshadow palette. So this is the Morphe 35O palette. Honestly, this is not a bad palette. I would have to say it's actually a pretty good palette. I'm not going to lie. But I do not support Morphe whatsoever, but I just wanted to whip it out and show it to you guys. I think I dropped it once, and that's why that eyeshadow is ruined, and that's a really good eyeshadow, but I never use this palette anymore. I don't support the brand whatsoever anymore, so I don't use it. I really regret buying this palette. I wish I could give it to someone that would use it more than me, but I probably wouldn't be able to sell this for more than like $5 or $6 because it has a damaged eyeshadow in it, so it kind of sucks. Then I have two Makeup Forever palettes. I have the Makeup Forever Artist 1. Is this the one? I guess we'll find out. This is the Artist 2. So we have the Artist 2 palette. I just don't really use this. I have so many shades that I have in like the Too Faced Sugar Pop palette or like the Juvia's Place palette that I don't really use these, but they do have a really good formula, and I have used every single shade. I just don't find myself using this. I might put it back into my collection though and try to use it, but I just can't seem to give these away. They weren't inexpensive palettes. They were definitely pretty pricey. But then they kind of went on sale and no one really talked about them. But this was a better way to try out the artist shadows without like breaking the bank, because this one was definitely used more because obviously it's a neutral palette. This is the Artist 1. But this was a good way to try out the Makeup Forever eyeshadows because they are very expensive to... Oh my god, I'm getting so tired of talking. They're very expensive to buy on their own. They're like $25, but the pans are very big. But I just found that if I got these two, that they would be cheaper. I did buy like a trio once as well that I never use anymore. So I kind of regret buying these because they weren't inexpensive, and I think some people found these at TJ Maxx or Marshalls, and these were on sale for a while on Sephora and Ulta. I think on Sephora. Obviously, Ulta doesn't carry Makeup Forever. And then I have some e.l.f. Disney palettes here. This is when I was obsessed with these palettes, and this is when this was like when I only had like these palettes in my collection. I have of course, the Sleeping Beauty Good vs. Evil palette. I love the packaging on these. Aren't they so cute? So I have this e.l.f. eyeshadow palette, and I used to use this palette like crazy. I would use this part, obviously the Sleeping Beauty section for really neutral looks for like daytime, and then I would use the Night Villain, which is obviously the Evil Queen Maleficent side, for like when I wanted to do colorful looks. And it was just like the only palette that I thought that I needed in my life, and I loved this palette. It brings back so many memories for me. I love it. Then I have the e.l.f. Jasmine palette, A Whole New World. So this one is the e.l.f. Jasmine palette, and it comes with 7 eyeshadows right here. And then it comes with a bronzer and a blush. And it always would come with a lip product. Again, I loved this palette as well. I would use this so much when I would wear my Jasmine shirts, and I definitely didn't get as much use out of this one out of the Good versus Evil palette, but I would go and search for these palettes like crazy, and I think this is when I didn't have a car. So my boyfriend used to have to take me to Walgreens and search for the palettes. I used to make him take me. I was so bad. But I think when I got this one, this is when I finally got another car. This is the Elsa one. This is obviously the Frozen one. This is the Snow and Ice palette. Look how cute the packaging is. And this one I definitely used the least. But again, these are really good quality palettes. These are the eyeshadows. Really cute. And the face highlight is actually freaking gorgeous, as you guys can see. I used to use it quite a bit. And it came with 2 eyeliners. Why it came with 2 eyeliners, I don't know. I guess like the highlight kind of like crumbled a little bit and kind of like wore off on one of the liners, and it came with a lip product as well. So I just thought these were really, really cute, and I wanted to share those with you guys. But I never use them anymore. And then we have 3 more palettes and we're finally done. So we have the Urban Decay, one more Urban Decay palette. We have the Urban Decay Ammo palette. Oh my god, actually, wait a minute. Wait a freaking minute. I have 2 more eyeshadow palettes. Right? I think that's it. Yeah. Oh god. It's just never ending. This is the Ammo palette. I got this on sale from Ulta. And I did used to use this a ton. But I don't really use it anymore. But this is a really beautiful shimmer palette. The solid formula. But as you guys can see, there are a lot of repeat shades in here. Like Smog is in the Naked palette. Chopper is in the Naked 2. Sin is in the Naked 1. But these 6 shades are pretty unique to this palette. And they're beautiful. Such beautiful shimmer shades. So this is a really good palette. I just don't use it anymore. And then I have one more Urban Decay palette, which is the Urban Decay Gwen Stefani palette. This was definitely my least favorite Urban Decay palette I've ever tried. I used to use it a lot, and I used to really like it for neutral eyeshadows, but I just don't think the formula is that good. I wish I could sell this palette, but I only got it because I really like Gwen Stefani. I really liked the blush palette that I got. It's really, really good quality, but I didn't think that the eyeshadow palette was as good as the blush palette, but the packaging is stunning. Then I have this, I think this is the last palette. No, it's not. I'm lying to myself. No. Okay, so this one kind of has some dust on it. Let's wipe that off. So this is the Tarte Showstopper Clay palette, and this used to be one of my favorite palettes, but then I kind of realized that like Tarte doesn't really have a great formula. And I tried to give these palettes away. I gave all 3 of these palettes to my sister. The Tarte, the Urban Decay, and one of those Too Faced palettes I'm going to talk about. And I thought that she would use them, but she had them for like a month and she never used them. She was like, oh, I'm never really going to use these. I never wear eyeshadow. I'm like, great. So they came right back to me. I was so mad that I wasn't able to get them out of my collection. But this palette is really good. I just never use it anymore. The bronzer is really good in here. The highlight's really good. The blush is really good. I wish I could sell this palette as well. And the eyeshadows are good as well. But I never use this palette ever anymore. Just not my cup of tea anymore. And then 2 more Too Faced palettes. And then we're finally done. We have the last tin palette that I have in my collection. This is the Too Faced Boudoir Eyes. And I thought I was going to like this palette a lot more when I got it. But I just don't think it's that good. It's just okay. Like, I just don't think that the palette, that the colors work as cohesively as the Natural Eyes palette. So I don't really use it all that much. But it is a pretty palette, but it's kind of boring. And then my last palette I'm sharing with you guys, and my most used palette in my whole collection. And this was the only palette that I had in my collection for a really long time, besides a couple of single shadows from MAC. I wish I still had those to show you guys, because I did hit pan on most of those. But this is the Too Faced French and Fabulous palette. This was the first palette that I ever got that was a high-end palette. I used to be not really interested in makeup until my brother got this for me, and then I started collecting eyeshadow. a couple of years after that, but this was the only palette that I had in my collection for a really long time. I loved it. Obviously, you guys could see I used Poodle Puff Pink a ton, but these were beautiful eyeshadows. I think that this formula was so much better than Too Faced formula now. I feel like their formula has changed a lot. I never used the bronzers in here because I never really used bronzer because my skin was so fair. And I never really knew how to use bronzer, but this palette is really pretty. The hot pink in here is amazing. I used to use this like crazy, but then I was like, oh, makeup has an expiration date on it. I used this for a good like 5 or 6 years, and I was like, yeah, I need to stop using that because it's pretty old. But it was my introduction to makeup. I talk about this palette like crazy in my makeup journey video, so you can go check that out. And that is it. That is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this in-depth look of all of my eyeshadow palettes. I thought that this would be a really fun video to do, and I've been watching a lot of these videos on YouTube recently, so I was like, maybe I should do my own. So that's it. So please like and subscribe. Follow me on all my social media. I am so done talking. I love you guys. Bye! And let me know which of these palettes are your favorites, which ones are your holy grails, and would you purchase any of these, and how many palettes are in your collection? I would love to know. I probably have over 50 or 60 eyeshadow palettes. I probably should go count them before I end this video. So bye. But I'm going to go. Bye. I'll put it in the description box of how many palettes I actually own when I upload this video. So yeah. Bye-bye.